The candlelight flickered in the silent chamber, casting long shadows across the red silk curtains. She knelt on the cold jade floor, her lips pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her chest. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth, staining the front of her wedding robe. Before her stood the man she had once loved, the man she had sacrificed everything for. His face was sharp and cruel, his eyes filled with icy disdain. Her husband, her betrayer. "You should never have trusted me," he sneered, lifting the wine cup with deliberate slowness. "A woman like you was only ever meant to be used." Behind him, the delicate laughter of his beloved concubine rang out like silver bells. The woman stepped forward, her eyes brimming with mockery. "How pitiful! Even in death, you still look at him with those foolish eyes. Do you really think he ever loved you?" Her vision blurred, the chamber tilted, every breath was agony. Was this how it would end? She had once been a noble daughter, raised with dignity and grace. She had endured humiliation, endless slander, and poison in her veins, all for the sake of the man who now watched her bleed. Her fingers clawed against the jade tiles as darkness began to close in. Her final thought was not sorrow, but fury. "If the heavens have eyes, if they grant me another life, I will never forgive you. I will rise from the ashes, and I will make you kneel before me." The last sound she heard was their laughter, sharp, merciless, echoing into eternity. And then, nothing. Chapter 1. Rebirth. She gasped. Her eyes flew open. The ceiling above her was not the cold golden dome of the Emperor's palace, but the familiar carved beams of her maiden chamber. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as her hands reached instinctively for the wounds that had ended her life. But there was no blood, no pain, only her own heartbeat, racing wildly beneath smooth, unbroken skin. She sat up, the silk quilt slipped from her shoulders. Her hands trembled as they touched her own face, her own body, whole, unscarred. A bronze mirror sat nearby, reflecting a young girl with delicate features, her skin soft and unmarked by poison. Her breath caught. This is me. Before the marriage, before betrayal, before death. Her pulse thundered in her ears. It was true. The heavens had answered her vow. She had been reborn. Her eyes burned as tears slid down her cheeks, not of sorrow, but of hatred. The memories of her past life surged through her like a flood. The endless humiliation, the false smiles, the moment her own husband pushed the cup of poison into her hands. This time, she swore silently, clutching the edge of the quilt with white-knuckled hands. This time, she would never again be that helpless woman. This time, she would not be the prey. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You wished me dead, but instead, I live again. If I must become a demon to destroy you, then so be it." Outside her chamber, the spring wind stirred, carrying with it the faint scent of blossoms. But within her heart, only a storm raged. Chapter 2. A New Path. The next morning, her maid entered cheerfully, holding a tray of breakfast. "Young miss, you rose so early today. The madam will be pleased," she said. "His Highness, the Crown Prince, will soon be making his rounds again." "Perhaps." The maid's chatter faltered when she noticed the sharp, cold look in her mistress's eyes. The Crown Prince, her hands clenched under the silk sleeves. In her past life, it was precisely because of him that she had fallen into ruin. She had married him out of admiration, blinded by youthful love. She had believed in his promises, his honeyed words, only to be discarded once he found a more useful pawn. Now, hearing his name again, bile rose in her throat. She forced a smile, hiding the storm in her heart. "Is that so?" she murmured. "Then I shall be certain to greet him properly." The maid beamed, unaware of the venom laced in those words. Later that day, as the household gathered to receive the royal entourage, the young crown prince appeared on horseback, his robes embroidered with golden dragons. His smile was charming, his manner elegant. The young noble ladies around her blushed and whispered in admiration. But she only felt ice in her veins. When his gaze fell on her, recognition lit his eyes. He dismounted gracefully, approaching with a practiced smile. "You must be Lady Yoon. I have heard much of your beauty and virtue." In her past life, she had been struck dumb with awe, her heart fluttering like a fool. But now, she lowered her gaze, concealing the smirk tugging at her lips. Your Highness flatters me. I am but a humble daughter, unworthy of such praise. Her tone was soft, but her eyes gleamed with hidden mockery. The Crown Prince paused, slightly unsettled by her composure. He had expected shyness, admiration, perhaps even worship. Instead, he found only calm indifference. Unknowingly, he had already lost his hold on her. And standing behind him, seated in a golden carriage, was a man whose presence made the air grow heavy. His features were older, sharper, carved with authority. His gaze swept the crowd with the cold detachment of one who ruled over life and death. The Emperor, her future father-in-law. In her past life, she had never dared raise her eyes to him. But this time, her gaze lingered. And when his cold eyes briefly met hers, something in her heart shifted. So be it. If the sun was a venomous snake, then I shall marry the dragon who birthed him. Chapter 3. The Imperial Marriage. The great hall was ablaze with light, golden lanterns swaying as the sound of drums echoed. Red silk cascaded down the steps, and she, dressed in a crimson bridal robe, slowly descended. But this time, it was not the Crown Prince waiting for her. It was the Emperor himself. Gasps rippled through the gathered nobles, their faces pale with shock. The very daughter who had once been courted by the prince, now entered the palace as the Emperor's bride. She lowered her gaze, concealing the satisfaction flickering in her eyes. How ironic. Once I was meant to kneel at your side, but now, your father raises me above you. The Crown Prince stood stiffly, his face dark, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. She could feel his burning glare, but she only smiled faintly, her lips curving beneath the bridal veil. The heavens had truly given her justice. Chapter 4. Entering the Harem. Life within the Imperial Harem was treacherous. The Empress, dignified and cold, regarded her with thinly veiled contempt. The concubines whispered behind silk fans, their eyes gleaming with jealousy. She played her role well, gentle, polite, seemingly naive. She bowed gracefully, her voice soft as spring rain. But beneath the mask, her mind was sharper than steel. Every whispered insult, every hidden glance, she remembered. The harem was a battlefield where women fought with smiles instead of swords. And she had already died once. This time, no one would defeat her. Chapter 5. First Strike. It began at a banquet. A concubine had arranged for a dancer to stumble and spill wine across her robes. Gasps filled the hall as the concubine feigned innocence, waiting for the Emperor's wrath to fall upon the new bride. But instead of anger, she rose calmly, smiling sweetly. How clumsy of me, but how fortunate. Her eyes swept to the Crown Prince, who sat nearby, and then to the concubine who had once been his secret mistress. That accidents reveal hidden truths. Her words were like ice. With a graceful tug, she lifted the dancer's sleeve, revealing a jade bracelet marked with the prince's personal seal. The hall fell into stunned silence. The Emperor's gaze sharpened, and the concubine collapsed in terror. The Crown Prince's face drained of color. And she merely smiled, lowering her lashes in feigned innocence. The first strike has landed. Chapter 6. Palace Schemes. Her rise unsettled many. That very night, assassins slipped into her chambers, blades glinting in the moonlight. But she was not the naive woman of her first life. She had anticipated this. When the assassins struck, they found themselves ensnared in traps she had quietly arranged. Guards stormed in, and their cries echoed through the halls. The Emperor himself came, his cloak billowing, his face dark with fury. She knelt before him, her eyes wide with trembling fear, though inside, she was perfectly calm. Your Majesty, I am but weak and powerless. Were it not for heaven's protection, I would not be alive. Her words stirred his heart. For the first time, he looked at her not as a political bride, but as a woman he wished to protect. Chapter 7. Old Wounds, New Fire. Days later, she crossed paths with the Crown Prince in the palace gardens. He stood beneath the blossoming trees, his expression twisted with resentment. You think marrying my father will save you? He hissed, his voice low. You belong to me. She laughed softly, the sound chilling. In my past life, I belonged to you, she whispered, stepping close enough that only he could hear. And where did that lead me? Poison in my veins, death in your hands. His eyes widened. He stepped back as though struck. She leaned forward, her smile cruel. This time, Crown Prince, you will belong to me. Every shred of your dignity, I will take it all. The petals swirled in the air, but the chill in her voice froze him where he stood. Chapter 8. The Concubine's Fall. The prince's beloved concubine still clung to her favor in the harem. But one mistake was all it took. At another banquet, the concubine presented a rare dish to the emperor. Before he could lift his chopsticks, she spoke softly, Your Majesty, how thoughtful. To serve this dish, when the records say it once caused the late Empress Dowager grave illness. Whispers erupted like wildfire. The concubine turned pale, falling to her knees. The emperor's fury was swift and merciless. That very night, the concubine was stripped of her title, dragged screaming from the palace. And she sipped her tea slowly, savoring the taste of victory. Chapter 9. His Despair. The Crown Prince's power dwindled with each passing day. Finally, in desperation, he fell to his knees before the throne, his forehead striking the jade floor. Father, I have been loyal, I have served with all my heart. I beg you, do not cast me aside. The emperor's gaze was cold, unmoved. From her place beside the throne, she watched him bow and scrape. Her lips curved into a smile as sharp as a blade. In my past life, I knelt before you until my knees bled, she whispered under her breath. This life, you kneel before me. How does it feel? The sight of him trembling on the ground was sweeter than any nectar. Chapter 10. The Phoenix Throne. At last, her moment came. The emperor himself placed the phoenix crown upon her head, his deep voice echoing through the great hall. From this day forward, you shall stand as my empress. The court bowed low, their voices rising in unison, Long live the Empress. She stood tall, draped in golden robes, her eyes gleaming with fire. Her ex-husband, now nothing more than a powerless prince, knelt among the crowd, his face ashen, his fists trembling. The taste of her vengeance was complete. She lifted her gaze to the heavens, the weight of the phoenix crown firm upon her brow. This time, I will burn the world before I let it destroy me again. The wind swept through the grand hall, lifting her sleeves like the wings of a phoenix. She had died once, but now, reborn, she reigned. And no one, not the crown prince, not the concubines, not fate itself, would ever take her throne away. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more captivating tales.